Okay. Yeah, right on. Well, thanks for having me, guys. My name's Roman Villarreal, and I run a little digital design training school in South Austin. And we teach different stuff, teach a lot of Adobe Creative Cloud products. And so this presentation won't be very long. It'll probably be about 15 minutes or so. But I'm here for questions afterwards because some of this gets a little bit kind of into the weeds, just a little bit, as far as kind of the nuances of the Creative Cloud. And so what this presentation is basically around is I had an opportunity to teach at Adobe Max this last year. And so basically what happened is, well, it got canceled. And so we had to do everything online, and they wanted to make it seem like it was a live event. So we had to pre-record all of our videos, but also have a talking head into our web camera, which, being overachievers like most of us are, I wasn't good enough with just the regular webcam. So I wanted to go ahead and film myself. And it was a pain in the butt. If you're interested in getting into, doing like these online tutorials and stuff, and you are, as you are, very attention to detail type of person, you may struggle because it's never good enough. And you end up wasting a lot of time. So what could have taken me a couple hours to do a 25-minute presentation ended up taking me 2 weeks to put together. And it was grueling, a pain in the butt. And so basically, this is going to be kind of a stem of that session there, what we're going to present. And so I'm sharing my screen right now, and basically, let me see here. The presentation, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat pod for you because it's right here, and we're going to talk about different. It's going to be a little different, of course, but this is the video, and basically, I swiped it off of the Adobe Max platform, and I put it up here. And so it's just kind of for us, but nonetheless, feel free to check it out if you're interested. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat somehow. I have a hard time with Zoom for some reason. It's just like, I feel like my grandpa on the internet or something. I just, well, I'm struggling to do that. There we go. My chat pod went away. So there's the link if you guys are interested.
So Roman, are you using Adobe Connect?
Using Zoom, actually.
I'm talking about for your training, online training.
Zoom.
Okay.
I mean, for Macs, it was some proprietary platform called Speaking Digitally or whatever. It was real awkward. But nonetheless, yeah, they made it seem like it was a completely live event and everything was pre-recorded just because it was difficult to try to make it live and not have weird things happen. Like there were a couple of sessions too where people had the opportunity to record and clean things up, but they left it kind of rough to make it seem like, it was live or whatever. But what I'm going to show you is basically some Creative Cloud collaboration stuff in the session. And I'm going to go through kind of a quick overview of some of the tools, and some of the stuff is a little bit dry, so I'm going to move quicker through some things than others. But my brother has a little inn in Oregon, in North Bend, Oregon, called the Itty Bitty Inn, and he bought it a few years back. He and his wife, and they it's got like 5 rooms, and they themed each room, and it's really just more for fun because they have the regular business, but it's become like this passion project of his, and he still does it, and it's gotten so successful. He was even named like the #1 budget motel in America. And had like all these awards through TripAdvisor, and yeah, he's gotten all sorts of good accolades of it. And he's working on a new project now because it's like, you can work real hard and make money and that kind of stuff, but if it's not something that it kind of excites you creatively, then it becomes just work, and you feel a little unfulfilled. And so I think that's why he goes to these projects, because it's a lot of work, you know what I mean? But anyways, the Creative Cloud apps changed quite a bit, since this last version. And so you got all our apps, and you can update and that kind of stuff and whatever. And, there's some little features up here for file syncing, your little notifications. And this one I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But one of the new things that you have is in your work section, these are all your libraries, potentially, if you use libraries. You can also find some cloud documents, and then also you can open your sync files, which I'm going to explain a little bit about the difference between those. Just a couple quick things to share with you that's new. You have this discover section, which is kind of like blogs and whatever, to kind of spark your interest in different fields within these different apps. And then you also have a brand new marketplace, which okay, it's all right. These are a lot of plugins, but most of the plugins aren't as useful like they used to be back in the Macromedia days. Now they're kind of like, I don't really want to use that. And so, and then they're not free. A lot of them you have to pay for. So I've not personally had good experience with these, but I usually stay away from them anyway, so I can't really say. And like this one I know is great, but I usually install this manually by going to the website, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't even need this portal, but I think it's going to get better in the near future. So these are supposed to be like things for you.
This year we're going to be working with the Itty Bitty Inn, a budget hotel in North Bend, Oregon that provides a safe, comfortable, and clean place for
talking to myself. I don't know who that was, but anyways, in your marketplace, in your libraries, you have your regular libraries, but like these are my libraries that I've made or that I've taken from other places or whatever. But you also have in your libraries, let me see and get here, this shared libraries. Those of you guys that like Easter eggs, there's some shared libraries in here.
Over here in your work, you can see all the collaborative tools.
Will you guys mute your speakers or something? Someone's jamming out to my voice there. All right.
You can mute the microphone.
Okay. All right. Anyways, so there's these libraries. If you go to Marketplace and go to your libraries, under all libraries, you can find all these libraries, and they've been adding them little by little. But these are basically free assets that you can connect to. And if you click on one, it takes you to the website, the assets.adobe.com, and there's fonts and images, and you can copy to your work, or you can download these. Really cool stuff, and it's free. So that's part of this Creative Cloud app. And look, you got brushes. Some of these are kind of celebrity type artists that they're putting up here and featuring. Who knows? I mean, maybe these will catch on. Maybe they'll put more things, but to tell you the truth, it's been a little stagnant lately, but I don't blame them because of the way things are right now. You know what I mean? Yes, ma'am.
Can these be used for any kind of social media?
You can use them for anything.
Fabulous. For advertising, commercial purposes?
Yeah, they're open source. Not open source. They're
and you can change them. You can work with them.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Fabulous. Amazing.
Let me show you since you asked on the front of Lumenbrite, we've repurposed some of those graphics to put on page. Now these don't look the same as what we found up there, but they were a good start for inspiration in terms of getting kind of this kind of popular vector look that's going on right now. Instead of trying to start from scratch, we found something up there and we tore them apart and reused them, and reused some of our graphics.
That's great.
So anyways, you have Adobe stock, of course, which they want you to buy, but there's also some free stuff you can take a look at. I'm going to go back to your work. And as I mentioned here, you have your cloud documents too. So you have your libraries, that's one thing, CC libraries. And then you also have cloud docs, which is kind of a new and upcoming thing. It's already here, like you can already use it, but it's not completely baked. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But cloud docs are pretty cool. And then you also have the sync folder, which is like a Dropbox-like feature. And so when you install a Creative Cloud, you get this Creative Cloud files folder, and these are all, I use this quite a bit, you know what I mean? So you'll see all my files. And then there's also an online equivalent. So just like Dropbox or Google Drive or one of those. And so if you go to assets.adobe.com, this is your drive, your Creative Cloud drive. And so you'll notice anything I have in here will mirror whatever I have here, for better, for worse, right? Sometimes maybe you just want something to live here and not live on the web. Well, if you put it in here, it's going to synchronize. And that's the whole purpose of this. But let's say you just wanted something to be up on the cloud, but not in this sync folder. Well, that's where you have cloud documents. And so it's not just a place to store things up on the cloud. There's some special features, okay? Some kind of cool stuff. Look at this, XDC, PSDC, what the heck? AIC. These are cloud documents, and there's some really special things going on there and things that are yet to come and things that they haven't even announced yet. In fact, I got to talk to the Creative Cloud team, and I was asking them all sorts of questions, and they're like, it's going to work later. It's not working now. Certain features, that I was hoping would be enabled, and they're not, but they're coming. So if I go to my synced folder, for example, which these again are files that are on my computer, I can come through here and I can find, for example, this itty bitty in folder. And in here, I can see all the different assets. These are things that I've uploaded, photos, Illustrator files, InDesign files, whatever. And we're going to see some of those. But essentially, I could take this folder, and there's some buttons in here up at the top. Maybe I want to, I don't know, maybe there's a folder, this thing called selects, and I want to share this with someone. I can share it. This would get me a link, and this get link will allow me to send this to the client, but they won't be able to mess with anything in this folder. They'll just be able to download things, add comments, and they can save it to the Creative Cloud, but they won't be able to mess with my files. The other option here is what they call invite, which used to be formerly called collaboration. And notice it warns you, says, hey, you can't do this with a nested folder. So there's little things that you'll find like that. You're like, why not? Why can't I do that? You have to work around it, But this is the root of this assets.creative cloud site. And so if I wanted to share that, I'd probably have to share the entire folder here with this invite, and then I'd be able to collaborate. And so let's say I wanted to collaborate with Dulce here, and I could say I want her to be able to edit or view, or I can remove her privileges. And so I actually do work with Dulce. She's one of my daughters, and she's creative like us. And so I'll work with her collaboratively. And when I'm ready, I can just share this folder with her. If I want to share it with a client, I'll probably just say can view as opposed to be able to can edit. And so these collaborative features are really cool, and I'd encourage you to play around with them. This system used to be a little wonky, but as of late, I mean, we use it professionally. And in fact, even in our online classes, instead of sending people some Dropbox link or whatever, we use the Creative Cloud. And so when I'm doing an online class, for example, this training here, I put my class files up as a zip file. These are class files. And then I'll put a new folder up here that's just empty. And in here, there'll be the recordings from the session of that, the day 1 or day 2 or whatever, depending what it was. And so what I do is I share this link with the client, send it to the students, and then they're able to get those assets after class. They just go look in that folder where the recordings are as I'm dropping the videos in there. And it's easy. We've gone through all sorts of things this year to try to figure out how we weren't going to have problems with students. And if you're planning on doing online training, there's going to be a real difficult time to start where you're kind of breaking things in and your students, and they're just confused. And so that's why we got off Adobe Connect, because everyone uses Zoom for better, for worse. And so especially like teachers and academics, and the military is not crazy about Zoom, but they'll tolerate it. And so anyways, the Creative Cloud is a great resource because you get a lot of storage. I mean, up here, I have 100 gigabytes with my account. That's pretty good. And you're already paying for it. So why not use it, right? Instead of having to get Dropbox, and now you're paying another fee. But this is a lot more than just a storage solution. So for example, I'm going to go into, in fact, I'm going to jump right into Illustrator. And I have all these logos and stuff. And so if I go to libraries, I can come to my libraries, and I have all these different libraries in here, more than I need. I can see the collaborative features right here, the little people. Okay, that means I'm sharing this with someone. Right here, this is a public library. This does not belong to me. It's one of those public libraries I was showing you that Adobe gives you. But I can create a new library here. In fact, I already made one for the itty bitty in called itty bitty and assets. Or let's see, I have another one down here for, say, the let me see. Let me go with one that has a lot of stuff in it. Okay, this one got a lot of stuff in it already. And what happens is you get to making like a really big mess of things. And so when you're starting out, what you may want to do is you create a new library and you call it, something, whatever you want. But you can take assets and just drag them into the library. And you can drag photos in here. Notice that I drag these together, so they got grouped together as one piece of artwork. But if I had taken these individually, they would be brought in individually. And then let's say I have, some text. You can bring text in there, and it gets in Illustrator, it's going to be brought in as artwork. But if I have colors, for example, I could take these colors and I could drag them in, and they'll also be created as artwork. Or I can come to the bottom of the interface and there's a little plus button, and I can say, okay, graphic. But somehow, some way, I want to be able to add these as color swatches, but these little buttons down here aren't going to serve that purpose. So if I go to my window and choose and see, I'm like, where do I go? How about swatches? That sounds about right. Well, I have these swatches here, and this is like the traditional way I could highlight a bunch of colors, right? And I could push this little folder icon, and I could create, the itty bitty swatches. And what that'll do is that'll take these colors, this artwork, and it'll convert these into colors from my swatch panel here. And I got a color group now.
Cool.
And that's cool. But if I tried taking this, I can now bring this into my library, because there's a little button right here. It says add selected swatches to library. And if I do it, it says, hey, you can't do it. Maximum of 5 colors. But that's supposed to change according to Adobe. I talked to them. They said that apparently that's like a hard thing to do, to add more than 5 colors. And so they're saying that coming this 2021, which it hasn't happened yet, coming 2021, that will be fixed. And for now, I can only add 5. And notice that gets added not as an Illustrator file, but a color group. And so what happens is, let's say I want to add some photos in here. Well, I could just go to a folder where I have a bunch of pictures. And in this case, I have these images here. I could just shift click a bunch of images and just drag them in here, and they're JPEGs. And so the other thing you can do, though, is you can open up the Creative Cloud app and go find your library. Like this is the library. One of these is the library. I called it something. There it is. There's something. I can also just take a folder of files here, and I can also just drag them into the Creative Cloud app. You can drag a lot of things in here. If you try dragging something like an open type font in here, they'll say, hey, doesn't work. But look at all these other things that you can dump in here. And for you InDesign nerds, look at this. This is the one that blew me away. InDesign templates. You can put an InDesign template inside of a Creative Cloud library, which you can't put an InDesign file inside of Creative Cloud library, but you can put a template. Yeah. And so you can put Illustrator files, you can put Photoshop files, but you can also put in Photoshop templates and Illustrator templates. But like I said, you can't put InDesign files. It has to be an InDesign template. And there's a lot of other things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this. Let's say I go back to this document though, and I have these different fonts that I got from Adobe fonts, and they're really cool. But I have a little bastard in here that I got from bvfonts.com. Okay, it's not a part of the Creative Cloud, so it's not going to sync automatically, because that's what normally would happen. Let's say I send this file to John or to Tom, and he opens it. Creative Cloud is going to pop open and say, hey, I don't have these fonts. You want me to synchronize them? You say yes, and then it all works. But these won't, because these were a font that I found on the site. But check this out. Here in the Creative Cloud, there's a new F section up here, and I can add fonts to the Creative Cloud. So if I do this here, I can go ahead and just take some fonts that I have. I have these spin cycle fonts, and I can just drag them in. Again, these were from a third-party font website, and I have to agree that I have license, okay, to do that. And I do. They're free fonts. It's cool. So I choose add. They get added here, and now they'll be available to me under my login throughout the Creative Cloud. So they're actually stored on the Creative Cloud server. Now, I can't share these with you. Okay, there's no share feature. They're only going to work on my login. So if I send this to John, I'm going to have to send him the fonts too. But if I log into this machine or machine at my lab or whatever, these fonts will work under my login. And so if I go back to Illustrator, boom, they snap into shape, and the fonts are now synchronized throughout the cloud. And this feature works really well. Again, the big question is always like, hey, so if I do this, does that mean that anyone can use this font now because it's on my Creative Cloud? And again, that's not the case. It's for you to use on your login. So it's pretty cool, really cool feature. Now, another thing I want to show you is these are really cute, aren't they?
Darling.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I go back to the Creative Cloud app and I click on Browse More Fonts, this is going to take me to fonts.adobe.com. And let me just log in here. For some reason, I'm logged out. And you guys have probably been here before, right? Like, okay, whatever. But it's a little hard. But let's say I type in decorations. It's like, nope. Okay, how about ornaments?
There you go.
It's like, nope, not really. I mean, if you guys figure out the right word to find these type of glyphs, I would love to know. But
Dingbats?
Yeah, I was thinking about dingbat or wingbats.
That's why I tried dingbats, not a tostada, okay? And even if you go back to Adobe fonts and you're like, oh, well, it's because you got to go to the filters, Roman, don't you know? I'm like, okay, sure. And so you come through here and you're like, okay, how about, what could I possibly choose that would maybe, make this in here? Oh, ornaments. Oh, yeah, there you go. And it's like, yeah, there's some of them in here. There's 2 pages of them, but I don't think you see those coffee cups and stuff that I have, right?
No.
No, they're not in there. So I don't know why they haven't organized these, but I found this one called Poppy. And there's Poppy. It's by Emigre. And so I come here and this has these pictograms. I've even tried typing pictograms, okay? But they're super, super cute. And they're all these different glyphs set. Okay. And they even have they created these new graphics. They created these graphics for Adobe Max, actually, I believe. And so Emigre is they're kind of have a big presence on Adobe fonts, and they're kind of a big, font house. And they even have like this custom page on Adobe's font site. And there's a cool video, and Los Feliz is a really nice font. They got some really nice fonts. When you're like, I don't know what font to use, come here and maybe you can get some Black Sabbath going on, Yeah. Really nice stuff though. And somewhere in here, you'll find those glyphs as well, but you're going to have to go looking around for them because they're not categorized properly, in my opinion, because it's hard to find. Look at that. What the heck is that? Elliot's. So there are a lot of little Easter eggs, okay, and little rabbit holes that you can fall in here. There used to be the Adobe Fonts blog, but if you open that now, at least last I checked, it just takes you to like the generic Adobe blog, and it's just like creativity. It's like, what about fonts? That's what I want to know about. It's like, oh, creativity. It's like, and you'll find like nothing on fonts in here, or hardly anything. The dedicated typography blog that was a part of Adobe Fonts, as far as I know, is gone. And I've looked and I've asked, and they're like, we don't know. What are you talking about? And I'm like, did I dream it? And they had all sorts of articles and everything. I even had some old links that I had shared with people, and they all go back to here. So, you're just going to have to go looking for it, for these cool things. So I'd recommend going looking and finding some little magic stuff up here. There's also these major font houses up here at the front. And so you go to Type Together, for example, you'll see that they have, like Emigre, they have like a dedicated site, little microsite within Adobe Fonts. Look at that cool graphic and stuff. And go even deeper. I mean, I haven't tried this, but I'm going to say, okay, what is this font? I'm going to click here, and there's information like about the font and who made it. So yeah, besides looking at the typefaces, which is obvious, you can learn about the type designer. And a lot of times there's some really cool links in here that will take you to other resources. In this example here, it takes you to the Foundry page, and it gives you another video, and it takes you back to where we were earlier. But then you can actually go to the Type Together website, which I've never been to. And you can go see what they're doing. A lot of these are not here in the US, okay? And you're like, whoa, what the heck? Where have I found myself? A lot of times you'll find yourself in a foreign land, literally, okay, on the internet. And there's all sorts of cool stuff. Font websites are traditionally weird because I think typographers are a little strange eccentrics. And so their websites are strange and you're like, what the heck is this? And so if you're looking for some different things, come take a look at this stuff. A lot of stuff reminds me of the old days. You know what I mean? When you'd go on the web and you'd find weird things that are really inspiring and no one has ever heard of. There's like a video here. I don't know what that is. Cool stuff. Everything's become so corporate nowadays that it's hard to find these little nuggets of like creativity. You know what I mean? Everything tries to look the same. But I found some really cool inspiration. There is so much. I don't have enough time to show you how much you'll find up on the Adobe font site, and they're not talking about it at all. And I've asked them, I go, why don't you mention this? And I'm like, well, we do have a session at Max. And I'm like, okay, what's a session? And there's like 5 people in there, but they have one. There's a thing called the variable fonts. I don't know if you guys have heard of variable fonts, but they are the future. And it's like, okay, there's not many in here. But essentially they'll scale and the thickness changes as you resize things. And so there was a session up here and you'll find certain things up here with variable fonts, but it's coming. Like, what the hell? Where did I just get myself to? Okay. Japanese stuff, because Creative Cloud is international. So you'll find a lot of really interesting things up here. One of the things that I was going to show you, and it's escaping me. Let's see, variable fonts. I forgot. Anyways, do spend some time up there. Really, really neat stuff. Oh, I know what it was. You heard of the Bauhaus
Can you
School of Design?
filter things out in your search so that you don't get Japanese? Can you search by language?
I have no idea. I'm not sure. I don't believe so. Check this out. Heard of the School of Bauhaus Design?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, they have a few years back, they did a tribute to them. You've probably never even heard about it. I didn't know about it because the Bauhaus had the 100-year anniversary a couple years ago. And so I was trying to do a session with the Bauhaus and they're like, what's that at Max? I'm like, Bauhaus. And they're like, I don't know what that is. No, go do Dreamweaver. And so I did Dreamweaver again. But it's if you're not familiar with the Bauhaus School of Design, go check it out. In fact, for the 100-year anniversary, we redesigned our logo. We had a guy redesign our logo in homage to it. But they created some typefaces around this, and these are really based off of really old typefaces from the 20s and 30s. And so you can take a look, and there's a little write-up on them. These are real people.
Roman,
exist. Yes, sir.
just a quick comment. If we ever are allowed to travel again, you go to Berlin and you go to the Bauhaus Museum down there.
Yeah.
It is a tribute to functionalism and the Art Deco period. And I bought some. I've been there several times, but I bought some books there, and they have this thing about universal design. And I mean, they were kind of extreme because they thought they could universalize everything. So they studied into finding one font to like replace all fonts. It's universal, objectively best font ever. So of course, I don't think they were right, but it's very fun to go there and look at all the artwork and all the samples, and they applied this to architecture, chairs, furniture, photography, everything. So, well, let's hope we can travel again sometime soon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no,
Sounds like the Esperanto of fonts.
Exactly. It's actually the one Reros quadratic there on your this one is very similar to and these two guys, the Reros rectangular and the Reros quadratic. They look very much like some of those letters I've seen that belong to that font they called universal. Of course, it never
Very
became
round
universal.
sans serif.
Yeah.
Geometric.
Very simple.
Very grotesque. Okay.
Pretty grotesque.
Exactly.
And even on the kind of the more, one of the most popular fonts used is oh, what the hell is it called? Bebas. Neue Bebas or Bebas Neue. New Bebas, well, they have Bebas Pro now. So you've probably seen this typeface before. It's used a lot like in cinematography, like movies and stuff. And it's a really nice typeface. Well, there's a Pro version now that also has uppercase and lowercase. Again, they used to tell you about this. They don't say anything now. You just have to go up there and find it yourself, and you'll find the designer, and you can go to his website and check it out and learn about him. So anyways, I'm going to move on from this, but yeah, you can take a look at his site. He's got a site called Dharma Type, a really cool website. And these are all international designers and stuff. So it's not just stuff here in the United States. Anywho, back to Illustrator, that's where these came from. And so these are glyphs. And if you wanted to, I know many of you may already know this already, but if you wanted to access the whole list of glyphs, you would just go to Window and you'd go to somewhere in here, Type and Glyphs, and you'd be able to see the entire glyph palette, and you could insert a TV or whatever that is. And so there's a lot of retro things going on at this inn. And so these fonts work pretty well, these glyphs. There's not like infinite amount of glyphs on Adobe stock either, as far as I know. Like you probably won't find icon sets like you would in other websites. So it's a new addition. And I've asked, when I had a chance, I asked one of the Adobe fonts people, I said, hey, why don't you guys have glyphs? And they're like, why? And I'm like, why wouldn't you have a bunch of ornaments and glyphs? And they're like, I don't know. No one's ever asked. And I'm like, I can't believe that. Anyway, so nonetheless, you may see more of these in the future. So what I did is I went ahead and grabbed some graphics I put in my library and so forth. But there's one other really cool feature when it comes to the cloud that I want to share you. So this is an AI file, right? And you're like, well, duh, it is. Okay, Illustrator file. But I can also go to File, Save As, and I can save it as a cloud document. What the heck? Okay. So I'm going to save it. You may have seen this and might have been annoyed by this in Photoshop. And you're like, what is this? Save my computer. Leave me alone. Okay. But this has some functionality. Yeah. And so I'm just going to call this AAUG meeting. Okay. And I can store it. And this is going to store on the cloud. So I've stored it up there. And when it finished synchronizing, it'll also be up here in my cloud files, which I have to go back to my cloud documents. And there it is. Bam. So I can now share this with my client. Let's see, I just get a link here. And I'm going to open a Safari because I'm using Firefox right now. So I open Safari, and let's say the client got this, right? So they're like, okay, let's see what Roman sent me. And they get in here and they're like, oh yeah, that's very interesting. Well, I allowed them to comment, so they'd be able to comment. They would just have to basically create a basic login, if you will, and they'll be able to do that. They can also just copy it to the work. And I think you would have to like log in, because now you'd have to have a free Creative Cloud account. But to be able to do different things in here, commenting, whatever, that is a feature. And we'll take a look at more of this in a little bit, because you have to enable commenting. And you see I have it off right now. So you saw that there was no commenting features, right? But let's say I turn that on, copy this link, go back to Safari, and you'll see that here now, oh, look at that, I got commenting features. Mm-hmm. And I can submit this, and now I don't have a login because I'm my client and I don't want to do it, so I'm a Dr. Ralph, okay? And I continue. And so old Dr. Ralph, who's a doctor who's so impatient because he's got to go treat all these coronavirus patients, well, now he can look at his identity here, and he doesn't have to create a login and get annoyed by Adobe, okay? On my side, when I go to this asset and I go take a look at it, I can see Dr. Ralph has commented. And he'll be able to see things too. And I could even like pin certain things. Say this is the key.
Will those comments travel back into the Illustrator document at all?
Why? That would be a very astonishing thing, Tom. Let's find out. So if I go to Illustrator, it's like, well, I don't see them, right? If you go to Window, there is a thing in here called version history. It's like, let's see what they got, right? Let's see about comments or whatever. Well, they do have version history, so that's cool. But comments, as far as I know, are going to be accessible through the Creative Cloud on the assets.adobe.com site. But it's kind of different because InDesign does have a commenting panel, right? But Illustrator, as far as I know, there's no like commenting panel as of yet. And I always say that now whenever I'm teaching a class, I'm like, as far as I know, because
Yeah.
students will find something that I didn't know about, or I forgot, or someone in Bangalore hit a switch and turned on all these features overnight and didn't tell anyone. So I'm real cautious nowadays about being a know-it-all. But anyways, so yeah, the comments will live up here. And now my doctor here will be able to see the comments that I've also created, and he can hover over those comments here. And so you can also draw shapes. So the doctor could come up here and you say, I don't like that. And when I come back to mine, I'd be able to see that change on the fly whenever it updates. In fact, I don't think I did that properly. I think I have to make a comment and then submit it.
I don't see it.
I'm in a different browser or something. Anyways, so yeah, there it is. I closed it and opened it again. Anyways, so that's the commenting feature, really cool. But it's not in Illustrator as far as I know. However, let's say I start making changes here. Let's say I get rid of this key and maybe I drag from my library this other logo and I drag it out here. Well, as soon as I save this, notice that this has a cloud document now and it's an AIC file. So as soon as I save this file, it's going to say, hey, this is a linked file. That's not going to be supported at this time. So if you put a linked file that's not embedded in the document, it's not currently supported on cloud documents. So if I wanted this to be, usable, I would want to go ahead and embed this in the file, and then it would be a part of this document. So version history, it's not working right now for some reason, but it should work. And just as I'm making changes, so I'll come back to this in a little bit, but this should be updating with the versions. And that's one of the big features of using the cloud documents is that you have version history. Later, and they've already announced this publicly, but they haven't done it, we'll be able to have asynchronous editing. So me and Karen could open up the same document and I'd be able to make changes, and then she'd be able to take the same document and make changes as well. But we wouldn't be able to overwrite each other. And so that's coming to the cloud documents, but it's not there yet. And again, this file doesn't even have to live on my computer. It lives up in the cloud. So as when I close it down, I don't even have to store it on my local drive, but I can if I want to. Let's see, the version history. There's version history. So I can go back and say, okay, let's go back in time to when I had the key. I like that one better. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose to revert to this version. And in a little bit, it's pulling down from the cloud and revert. So now you have version history inside of Illustrator if you use and save it as a cloud document, which I think is really cool. There it is, been updated. So another thing that I like to do is I'm going to go ahead and just move this out of the way for now. And I'm going to my layers, my libraries panel. I'm going to choose this library where I have a bunch of stuff already. Let's see. I think kind of messy right now, folks. All right. So let's have a vector graphic. And this is an old school trick, by the way. So this isn't new. But let's say I have these graphics and I want to add them to my library. What you can do, and we're going to set this up for later is what we're doing, is I can drag these three graphics here. And then I can highlight all three of them and drag them into my library. And they get brought in as one graphic. So we'll see how that works in a little bit. But essentially, I'm going to bring these into InDesign and I'll be able to cycle through those images. Now, that's an old school feature for those of you InDesign and Illustrator experts. But what's different is that this is actually a Creative Cloud asset. So it's not like you're dragging it from your desktop. It's a Creative Cloud asset. Now, this may not work because there's a little thing that you have to do. a sneaky little trick that doctors hate, okay? And so I'm going to go jump into InDesign here, and I built this little design here, okay? Now, I didn't build it completely from scratch. In the CC libraries, this panel is pretty loaded with stuff. You can search your current libraries, like let's say I want to look for Bigfoot, okay? This is my current library, but I can also come in here and I can search inside of other things. And for example, let's say, well, maybe I'll do that later. Well, let's see. I can browse shaded libraries. I can find public libraries. You can find a lot of different things in here, and you can even search through Adobe stock, for example. If you want the free stuff though, the free stock, if you go to File, New Document, all of the stuff that you see here is free. And this actually lives on Adobe stock. Now, this one isn't free, but it's something that I bought, so it'll live in here. But under these print things, for example, you'll see these are all free. This was my saved stuff. This wasn't free. This is my stuff. But print, these are all free templates, web, free templates. If you go to the Adobe stock website, I don't think there's a filter for free anymore. There used to be. But I bought a template, and so I went to Adobe stock. There's so much stuff up there right now. If you've ignored that site for a long time because it was too much of the typical stuff, it's international and they got like thousands of things. So I found this template and I downloaded it. When you download it, it looks all pretty on the thumbnail, but when you download it, it just has a bunch of black, gray boxes and whatever. And so what I did is, this was inspiration. I think this costs like $10. And if you look at the properties of this document, not all of them are well built. You know what I mean? This one has styles in it, which is nice. Most of them are pretty decent, but they're not always to your standard probably. So if you go look at the character styles, for example, you'll see that in this whole document, there's only one character style. There's no bold, there's no italic, but there are a number of paragraph styles. So, it's like decently built. They're not bad. And you'll notice that they did clean up the colors and that kind of stuff. Well, if I wanted to use this template, what I would do is I just repurpose it and I can save it. So if I do a save as, I can actually save this as a InDesign template. Okay, that's an old school feature, but I could save it as an InDesign template. I'm just going to put this in my downloads for now. And it's a template. It's a template file. So if I want to put this in my Creative Cloud library, I'd go find it. There's my template. And I'd go to the Creative Cloud panel. I'm going to put it in this something library. I'll just drag it in here because you can do that. And now I have an InDesign template inside of my libraries, which I think, I thought that was really cool. You don't have to put it in the app. You can actually just drag it into the panel as well. You just have to find the panel that you're looking for, and you could just drag it in here if you want. It's acceptable. Try dragging an InDesign file in here. It won't work. Okay. So in this document here, I have a bunch of images, and I'm going to remove this icon here. I have this graphic that I made with you earlier. It's this, I'm going to just call it, let's see, I had one that was kind of messy. I want to find that one. I deliberately made a whole lot of stuff for the session. And then I thought, yeah, because that way it'll look real. It'll look like a real mess, And then I confused myself a lot. But anyways, so you can take this artwork. This is what I made in Illustrator with you earlier, and you can just drag this out. And, these are some vector arts. And of course, you can fit it or whatever. But what's interesting about this is I can right click on this and I go to Object Layer Options. Uh-oh, that didn't work. Normally, this would show the different layers and I could turn them off and on and be able to cycle through these images. So that didn't work. So what I have to do is in your layers, in fact, I'm just going to bring these into a brand new document just so that you see that there's nothing up my sleeves, okay? So I'm not cheating here. I got these 3 graphics. And so what I can do is I can take these and I could try to release these to layers. Okay, so now they're individual layers. I'm just going to drag this out of that layer. This is a trash layer now, so I'm just going to remove that. And so I'd rename these. I'd call these, Atari bike and BF for Bigfoot and done. I'm like, oh, done. Now I can just grab these and put in the Creative Cloud library. Probably not. There's one little trick, and you have to make sure this is turned on. Paste remembers layers. If that's not on, you won't be able to cycle through the images inside of InDesign. What this is for normally is when you create a bunch of images like this, you can go to a new document and you can paste them and they'll come in as separate layers. If you have that feature turned off and you copy everything and you create a new document, they'll just come in as one layer. So that paste remembers layers is a cool feature. I like it a lot, but it's also, I found, and there's no documentation around this, but I figured out that if this is going to work, okay, now I can bring this into my library and I'll give it a decent name, like Artwork 3 is pretty good. And I'm going to remove this thing, bring my Artwork 3 in here. And now when I right click and I go to Object Layer Options, voila, I have these layers in here. And you'll see that even though I deleted layer 1, sometimes it still comes in, it's just an empty layer. But I can toggle these off and make sure preview's on. And now I could cycle on to pick the right image that I want to go for. If you're going to use this, I'd recommend vector artwork. Loads really fast. If you want to put 20, 30 images in here, it'll work. You can also do the same feature with Photoshop files. The problem is if you add too many and they're high res, it's going to be really slow. So taking a look over here at Photoshop, let's say I have some graphics that I dragged in to my library, and I showed you that earlier. I just opened my Finder and I dumped a bunch of images in here. So let's say I have a bunch of images here, and I'll just grab these here. Let's see, P2, P2. I can just drag these into my layers panel, or I could, let's say I don't do that. Let's say I just drag them out here. I could also do that as well, drag them into my artboard. But you'll see that there's kind of like some hesitation on it. It's like doesn't want to. If this were an individual image, it'll work. So I found that it behaves more if you just drag them here. And then, I could spend some time and, resize these. And I know that these look kind of weird, but I'm not spending a lot of time with them just because of the time. I'm having some things done at my home here, and so I have to run to go be with my daughters in a little bit, but so I don't have all the time in the world here. But these are all in separate layers now, right? And so what you can do is I'm going to just grab these, just highlight all of them and throw them back into my library. And when I do that, I get a new thing called P2 Mural Bus, which it picked whatever name was on the top. So I'm just going to call this AAUG image stack. There it is. So now in InDesign, let's say I want to put an image there, okay, which I already have one, but I'm going to just remove this one here for now. So I'm going to come in here and find this image stack. I have quite a mess in here, and I know that, but I can't seem to find that image. There is a search bar up here, right? It's like, oh, well, it's also alphabetical. That would help. Once you have everything in here, you really want to start creating these little categories, and you can do so by just finding some empty space, and you can group these elements. So you can, you'll see that there's some grouping tools in here that you can choose from. But if you're looking for it, it's called AAUG, and there it is. It's a lot faster than thumbling through a bunch of graphics, right? So I can take this, drag this out here. I'm just going to dump it in here. Cool, but that's the same image up here. But this is a stack of layered images. So I can just right click on these, go back to that object layer options. Oops, I chose the wrong thing. There we go, object layer options, and check it out. I can go to preview and I can turn off these layers and cycle through the layer stack. That's the one I want there, the biker friends. And I can hit OK. Even if you don't do like a whole bunch of images in here, just another creative idea for you is you could take an image like this mural bus, for example, and you could come in here and add some adjustments. Maybe I add this color lookup and add a 3-strip LUT, and maybe I come back to my adjustments and I add a, I don't know, hue saturation, and I come down here and I colorize it and say, yeah, it's cool. Well, when I take this whole stack, I just highlight the whole thing and drag it back into my library here. Come on. You can do it. It's acting a little slow on me here. You can also just drag them from here too. Let's see if that works. Ah, there it goes. Gives it a bad name. You want to call it something good. And now when I come in here, I have no idea where that is because I have such a mess, but there it is. And so if I bring this out, so I'm just going to bring it right there. You're like, yeah, there's only one image. But if I come in here, I can actually change my mind and say, you know what? I don't want this hue saturation. Or maybe so you could actually put adjustment layers in here and be able to cycle off those changes right here within InDesign without having to, do that work elsewhere. Another thing that's really interesting about Creative Cloud libraries is in the links panel, you can see all the little clouds and those indicate that those are cloud assets. So one thing I wasn't able to show at Max because I ran out of time that I really wanted to show is, let's say, for example, this hue saturation image, I wanted to swap. Well, I can right click and I could relink this file. And I bring it to I could choose another image, for example. But there's also relink from CC libraries. And what this does is I can pick a different image. I'm just going to pick, this is a tiki room lamp. So let me scroll down so you can see that. It's that little tiki room. Let me say I'm going to pick this crabbing image instead. And then I choose relink. And now this is the crabbing image. So I'm able to swap out graphics that are inside the links panel with other graphics that are inside the library. Normally you just like relink it to some place on your folder in your computer. But in this case, you can actually link it from the library and it's still a cloud asset. This crabbing is still a cloud asset. If I don't like this crabbing image because maybe it looks bad or whatever, my brother tells me that this guy was really rude, and he had to tell him something. But I go, we got a picture out of it. They look really happy. He goes, yeah, they were really happy, but they were real bossy too. Anyway, so if I go and find this crabbing image in here now, and I want to make a change to it, there it is. I can right click and just say edit. And when I do, it'll open in Photoshop and I could come in here and make some changes or whatever. I know that's kind of weird, but I'm gonna go with it. Okay. So, but this is a JPEG. And so when I save it, it's going to want to save it as a Photoshop file, or it says, hey, do you sure you want to do this? And so whenever possible, instead of storing JPEGs up in your libraries, try to store them up as JPEGs, excuse me, as PSDs, and that way you'll be able to cycle them out and go back and forth between Photoshop without having to save them back again as JPEGs. And so one of the thing, all these graphics here and stuff were pretty neat. One of the things that I really wanted to show you, and I know that you Photoshop guys in here, I know you know how to do this already because I'm sure you got right on it. So there's a few Photoshop features I'd like to show you that are also related to new features. So this is a pretty poor image of the itty bitty end. It's what they gave me. And I was like, okay. So most of the time, to be non-destructive, you would maybe turn this into a smart object and maybe you would start painting out these lines and whatever. And so, yeah, that's the right way to do it. But one of the things I want to do here is I'd like to go ahead and besides moving these lines and whatever, there's a lot of fuzziness on the image. And so what I can do to turn this into a smart object is I can go to filter and I can convert for smart filters. And now look, it is now a smart object. What that means is that it's not inside of here. So whatever I do to this image won't be destructive. Of course, I don't really care most of the time if I'm destructive to an image or not, but I know the right way to do it or whatever to not be destructive. But you see here, if I wanted to try to start messing with things, it doesn't want to do that. So I'd have to get into the smart object and then I could come here and start, removing these lines or whatever. And I'm using just the little heel brush to do that. And it would take some time. And I would save this file and come back to my graphic, whatever it is. It's one of these here, kind of making a mess more than usual now. There it is. And so you can see the changes happen on the fly. One other thing, now that this is a smart object, I can also go to filter and choose camera raw filter. And from here, there's some nice features. They've updated this. And so, for example, it's really fuzzy. And one of my favorite features to use in here is detail. And what I can do is I can sharpen an image, but I can also come in here and bring up the noise reduction. And let's see, I don't know if we'll be able to see that on your screen. Yeah, doesn't seem to be working very well. I'm going to go max. I'm going to open this up, actually. You can see it even better. Notice if you open these little toggles, there's more detail. So I'll bring the detail down. Oh, look at that. Look how nice it is now. But if you go too far, it looks overtouched. In this case, though, it's probably going to be okay. But you look at that roof. If I go too far, okay. But it softens all that stuff. You want to see before and after, there's a little toggle here. This is before and that's after. It's not perfect, but again, we're doing major surgery on this image because it looks so terrible to begin with. There's also some nice temperature changes. So if you're used to using like Photoshop Camera Raw, well, that's what this is. But if you're used to using Lumetri color, you can come in here and make adjustments to shadows, bring those up, the blacks. Just like in Premiere Pro and After Effects, there's texture and clarity and the haze feature that they brought it a few years ago that can do some nice things. And so you can spend a lot of time in here, but there's like a whole bunch of stuff you can do in here. In fact, I painted this out using that heel brush, but you'll notice in here that you also have some other tools in here, including a spot removal. Now, I wouldn't necessarily do this, but you see that you can actually remove spots with this. So this is really better for like people's faces, like they have a pimple, and that's a spot removal button. There's an eye removal. So this is not a camera raw photo, but you can still use it for that. Another thing that I like to do is I like adding these graduated filters. This is right here is a graduated filter, just like in Lightroom. And I can bring down the exposure here, maybe make it, some cool color. And I know I'm going a little crazy here, guys, but you can add these graduated filters to add some interest in the photo. And you toggle this off and on, you can see, the before and after. With these graduated filters, you can mess with shadows and highlights and whatever, and it'll affect those, but you just need to make sure that you have them selected so that you can see those changes happening on the fly. There's also a radial filter. So I could come right here in the middle and maybe, make this center a little brighter, maybe add some contrast or whatever. And when I'm done, I can hit OK. Go mess around in here. There's some cool stuff that you'll find in this filter, in this camera raw filter. So take a look at it. If you used to using Lightroom, you'll be good at this because it's basically Lightroom inside of Photoshop without all the photo management, of course. You also have effects, geometry, like if you wanted to correct the level of the image. You have color grading things in here, 3A color grading. Okay. They're just like, they didn't mention much of this, you know what I mean? But it's there. And somewhere in here, which it's escaping me right now. I thought it was under effects, but somewhere in here, you can add filters like you can inside of Lightroom. Somewhere in here. But anyway, so check that out when you get a chance. One last thing inside of Photoshop. So I went ahead and corrected this. I removed the background. Once it's a camera raw filter, I can turn it off and on because it has a smart filter. So this was the file that I made. Instead of just putting the filter on the image itself, it's actually, you can toggle it. And if you want to change it, you can just, double click on that camera raw filter and you're back in here to make changes. So that's why you want to make sure you convert this for smart filters all the time. One last thing that's really cool. And like I said, most of you Photoshop nerds probably know this already, but there is a new feature in here called sky replacement. And I know there's other programs that do this, but man, this is just so easy. And it's already in Photoshop. Look at that. Just change the sky. You can, before and after. And they give you a whole bunch of skies to work with.
Oh, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a brand new feature. You can put.
Do that one.
Which one?
That one. Oh, sure.
The rainbow.
Mm.
And it's not just putting an image in the background, it's actually adding adjustment layers to change the coloring of the actual foreground of the image. And so these are all blue skies in here.
Is it possible to add additional adjustments to what you replaced that sky with? I mean, is it an independent element that I have?
Yeah. Yeah. So once you add these, they show up as a bunch of different layers inside of Photoshop, so you can adjust them. Now, the sky itself, you can also move. If you go too far, you'll break it, but you can move it. But you can also come in here, you can change the brightness. You can change the temperature. Maybe you want to fade the edge a little bit more. You see, I have it broken here. I have to pull that on here so you can shift the edge. You can scale the image if it's too small. And you can also load your own images, which I thought I had one in here that I already loaded. But I can just go ahead and create a new sky, or I can import skies. I think I have one right in here. Somewhere in here, there is a sky, and I have no idea, because like I said, I got a little carried away when I did this session, and I made a huge mess. And probably that's why it took so long for me to actually create my presentation, because I couldn't find any of my files. So I'll just throw this one in here. I know it doesn't work. It was supposed to be a Death Star, actually, because so this doesn't work at all. But this was supposed to be a Death Star.
Not even.
It's terrible. But when I showed my presentation, they're like, oh yeah, you can't do that. I'm like, why not? Because licensing. I'm like, but Endor was actually filmed close to here. And they're like, yeah, there's even a guy that created Star Wars posters, and he's not able to show his stuff at Max either. So anyways, but yeah, check this out. There's some other little tools in here. When you hit OK, you'll see these adjustment layers get added, and you can see, you can turn them off and on. That's the foreground. And look how nice it does around trees and stuff.
Really, that mask is just amazing.
Yeah, so this works great. And when you're done, you can highlight this and save it. You could also do a file save as, and you'd be able to save it as a cloud document. Okay, and so that would also now be shareable. As far as like version history, it also has version history in here too, if it's a cloud document. So that's a really cool feature. This will also have asynchronous editing, supposedly coming in 2021, or did they say 2020? I think they said 2020. I have no idea, but it's supposed to be coming. So, there's a lot of the things we can cover, but I think like I put, a moon in there because I wasn't able to put Death Star. But other couple little quick notes inside of, there is a review panel inside of, what is this program called? InDesign. So you can set up a review and yeah, check it out. There's some, this comment feature. There's a PDF comments as well, PDF comments panel where you can import PDF comments. Now that's not really necessarily related to Creative Cloud, but it's more of a newish feature that has come out. But anyways, any questions, guys?
When is 2021 going to start?
On the 20th.
They've been real kind of here and there, you know what I mean? They're closed down too or something. I don't know. There's a Creative Cloud panel inside of PowerPoint now and Word, and you don't even need a Creative Cloud account. That's kind of cool. But anyways, guys.
Roman, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I mean, one is, you mentioned a free Adobe Creative Cloud. Can you just describe that?
Yeah, you can get a free account.
Without owning any Adobe products, or?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well,
okay.
You won't own them. You'll be able to access certain programs like Adobe XD, for example.
Uh-huh.
And so, they have a free trial, but.
Yeah, I just wanted I have a cloud account. I was just wanted to get it in the record about that.
Yeah, so they give you 2 gigabytes of free storage, free mobile apps.
Okay, I understand.
It's a lightweight version.
It's light.
Great. Yeah.
I got it. Okay, and the other question I had is, we've been putting all of our AAUG Zoom recordings on YouTube and then embedding them on our website, austinadobeusergroup.com. I'm wondering if you think Adobe would give the group storage for them, and is there an advantage to keeping them in the cloud? Can they also be embedded, shared in a website from the cloud, or would we still want to have them on YouTube?
You'd probably want to put them on YouTube. As far as I know,
Mhm.
there's not a way to have the share video and embed it.
Okay.
There's no embed link.
Yeah, so it's just a storage blocker, like Dropbox. Dropbox will let you at least watch a video.
Yeah, and you can watch this video here even on the site. You know what I mean? But there's no
Okay.
as far as I know.
So the YouTube channel is better for our needs.
That would be better.
And that actually gives me a perfect segue into letting you know that all of our meetings are now being put on the Austin Adobe User Group YouTube channel.
Oh, cool.
So
very cool. All right, guys. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I had one. Well, just like Dropbox or anything else, I guess. So when you have the synced files that they live independently on your computer or hard drive or wherever you have them synced to.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's actually really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like Dropbox.
Yeah.
Which some people complain because they don't like that they're synchronizing. So, it's going to live in both places. And if you go log into some other computer, all your files start downloading into that computer, whether you wanted it to or not, So there's just some little things that you got to watch out for.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Roman, do you know if, so you got 100 gigabytes, but what's the standard? Is that going to be the standard from now on, or is it 20 for a regular subscription, or do you know anything about that?
I don't remember. I know that was something that everyone kept asking, and the team kept answering, but I don't remember. I would look up and it changes. It's going to change because they keep updating, and well, they kept upping the amount of storage, and so
it should increase.
Yeah, it should be increasing.
20 gigs is you can't do much anymore.
No.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Roman. It's awesome. Very nice, very interesting stuff here.
Useful.
Good.
Really do appreciate it. And
outstanding presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you, guys. And yeah, stay safe. And yeah, I hope to see you guys at the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Roman.
Okay, guys. Have a good one now.
Yeah. Take care. Say hello to